Shut up and sit down.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Rachel from Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow. This week's episode features Peter Tripp, a certified beer judge and owner of Nassau County's own home brew supply shop, Brew and Hand Grenades. Listen, don't forget to subscribe to the Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow podcast on iTunes. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a review and tell us about it. Now, go grab a beer and enjoy episode 29. Cheers.
Hey guys, what's going on? This is Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow. Very, very happy to finally be here at Brew and Hand Grenades at 2378 Grand Avenue in Baldwin, New York, 11510. And we have a very special guest here today. Sir, please introduce yourself.
What's going on, guys? It's Pete Tripp over at Brews and Hand Grenades. How you doing?
Pete, thanks so much for hosting BTBT here. We definitely appreciate it. You guys are dare I say legendary, but you guys are a very, very, popular and well-known brew club here, in Long Island, in New York in general, and it's great for us to finally be here after hearing so much about you guys. So let's jump right into it. How did you get into home brewing?
It was a long time ago. Believe it or not, it stemmed from Dogfish Head. So what used to happen when we were younger, my friends and I, we would go down to Delaware. One of my friends has his property on a lake with like a double wide and a cottage, and we'd go down there and it would be like almost, just before the kids happened. It was like a toga party type of thing.
Right.
And my buddy was like, hey, there's a brewery 10 minutes away, and it was Dogfish Head. Went in there, had the beers, blown away by it, and just talking to the guy behind the counter, he's like, yeah, you can do it at home. I was like, oh, okay. So that kind of that kind of put the idea in the head to just get doing it, because I was a fan of beer, so it was just natural progression. So it was like Christmas time, and I told my wife, I was like, yeah, I want to get a homebrew kit, and I told her exactly what I wanted, but she got me like a Mr. Beer kit. So
it's a thought that counts.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. But I burned through those kits just so I can get to the stuff that I really wanted to do, and it was just I'd say out of any hobby I've ever had, it's the only thing I've ever stuck with. So and it just turned into just a passion, and now I have a homebrew shop.
That's awesome. So I mean, how long were you brewing before you decided, you know what, I want to take this to the next level, to a level beyond?
It was like 6-7 years, and it was never like a plan. It was like, my goal is to open up a homebrew shop. It kind of happened out of almost necessity, in a sense. I was a structural iron worker. I was with 361, and I was doing that for 7 or 8 years, and my back put me into retirement. So 35 years old at the time, I'm like, my goal was like, I'm gonna be an iron worker. I'm gonna be like, all beat up when I get old, but life happens.
Right.
So I had to have back surgery and all that other stuff, and
Wow.
Once that happened, that was it. I asked the doctor after I had my surgery. I was like, so when can I go back to work? He's like, pretty much. He was like, you're done. Like, you're done, dude.
Wow.
That's it. So I was just mulling around, like, what now? Like I said, I was 35 years old. So it just like popped in my head. I was like, home brewing for a long time. It's something I really love doing. It's something I really got into and absorbed and learned. And the thing with Nassau was like, there was not like a big presence with home brewing. So I just took the dive. I was like, let's go for it. I would walk, actually the shop I'm in now, after I had my surgery, I would go for walks, and I would walk past this shop, and I would look in it, and I just had this vision in my head. I was like, this is the spot. So, and I just started like mapping it out in my head, looking through the window, and I learned how to, from doing construction, learned from the first floor up, how to start a business. I went to school for art initially, and then I went to apprenticeship school. Nothing for business, So, just how to start like a LLC, doing a website, getting wholesalers. It was just, just learning. And at that point too, my son was born, so it was a lot on my plate.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So what did you find, the most challenging part of opening this business?
I think that's a good question. I mean, I think just honestly, just learning the whole aspect of starting a business from scratch, not having any experience. I mean, the only thing I really had kind of going for me is I'm pretty like OCD. So every time I would, and I also used to work for Coca-Cola. But like any job I would ever have, I was always like the just try to do things to make things smooth, and I would just get put into positions where I was just taking care of stuff. So the stuff that I learned from whatever job I was at, I just applied it to doing this. So going from, I think, just work, and I think also the discipline too, because when you work with someone, you got someone to answer to. When you have your own business, you have to answer to yourself, and it's like, he's not going to yell at me. So I think also probably the discipline, but I think that's probably was like the biggest challenge. So
sure, when the trade-off is you're your own boss, but you're probably working 2-3 times as hard, and
Sure.
longer, just trying to make sure everything's going the way it should be going.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, you try to do whatever you can to just not burn yourself out too, which it's tough, but you have to focus on why did you do this? Like, why did I open up a homebrew shop? Why did I start my own business? So.
Well, I mean, and then it's a big commitment. So how do you balance even now? How do you find that balance between work life and personal life? And is there a balance?
I don't. It's tough because now it's the home life, or just like the social life after work, has become more beer focused for sure. It's like you kind of want to, you gotta put. To me, I thought it was important to put myself out there. So when I first started, I was doing beer festivals to promote the business, just to get involved with the craft beer scene. And, I was, big fan of what was kind of starting to happen at the time when I was first preparing to get the shop open. It was at that time it was Barrier was not far from it was Oceanside, which is awesome because that's where I live.
Barry's awesome.
Yeah, and at that point I think Barrage was starting to open. Long Island was around, so I saw you could see something was happening, So it was exciting, and it's kind of exciting to be like semi part of it. I know that's like brewers are a separate entity from home brewing, but it's that's where everyone starts from, or at least that's where they should start from, is home brewing before you think about opening up a brewery. So.
Oh yeah, you gotta crawl before you can leap in that instance. So is there a story behind the name?
Yeah, actually there is. When I was a kid, my grandfather would say, Pete, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, and like that was it. So when I was just trying to come up with the name, I was like, it just kind of like rattled in my head. I was like, home brews and hand grenades, and like I molded over maybe like a couple hours. I was like, that's it, it's stuck,
And that was it, huh?
That was it, yeah. Homage to Grandpa. So
yeah, shout out to Grandpa, naming the place. That's awesome.
That's it, yeah.
That's really cool. Now you mentioned that you worked for Coca-Cola. What did you do for them?
I was initially a merchandiser, so I was the guy that go around to all the stores, and pack it out, get everything on the shelves. And then for a while, I was doing merchandising supervisor, where I had 25 to 30 guys, and I had to make sure that they were packing out the stores. So
right.
I did that for a while. So, and
cool.
you just kind of want to move on after a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So from the time you kind of was like, okay, this place is it. This is what I want to open. How long did it take from that point roughly to when you actually finally did open?
I'd say about 8 months.
It's not bad.
Yeah, it was just, just trying to figure out, where you're getting your stuff from, just getting like an LLC established, trying to get the wholesalers lined up. Theoretically, I probably should have done market research, but like I said, I was learning from the ground up. So, but not too long. But I was doing I was pretty much doing everything because just it was what it was. So.
Right. So then when did you guys officially open the doors for the first time?
It'll be actually this coming Monday will be 4 years.
Wow!
So,
Congrats.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And now you're like a homebrew group, right? You have a whole club going on. Can you tell us about that a little?
Sure. So the club kind of started organically. I host like a homebrew bottle swap once a month, and it's always like the second Thursday. People come down, they bring their homebrew, they bring commercial beer, sometimes beef jerky, and it was just a lot of the same people that were coming in, and it just happened organically. We were also involved too with me and a couple other guys were involved with another homebrew club that we're still active with, and they were like Suffolk focused, and it's tough to with the club meetings, a lot of times you go to a place that's beer focused, and to go out there, to drive to Suffolk, and you're gonna have a couple beers, and then you got to get home.
Yeah.
So
it's a Long Island. It really is.
It really is. Yeah. So, we just kind of started. We sat down, a couple guys. This guy Sam, Ken, this guy TJ. We just sat down like, let's go for it. It wouldn't be conflicting with the other club that we were involved with. It would just be Nassau focused. And or not really necessarily Nassau focused, but it's like it's an open club, so and a lot of people that were coming to the bottle swaps pretty much became the club. So
and roughly how many how big is the club?
It's tough to say. Usually when we have meetings, we'll get like between 40 to 60 people, depending on the venue. But there's also like the club page, and there's like I think over 200 people. So actively, I'd say probably like, let's just say, just for a number, like 50 people.
What's the process like if someone wants to do basically like is there like a vetting process? Do they just need to be a homebrewer who's legitimately interested?
Honestly, it's just open. When people come in, I'm like, look, when people first come in and they want to learn how to brew, I'm like, I really push the club because the thing my favorite aspect of homebrewing is the community aspect.
Yep.
And I think that's the best thing that happened out of the shop is the community that kind of like started out of it. So I just tell people come down. It's laid back. It's homebrewers. Like the thing with homebrewers, like it's like if you're looking for the jerk, you're probably the jerk. And the thing that's really cool too, it's like no one's like when people come down, it's not like when someone brings down a homebrew, it's never like, oh, this is terrible. You shouldn't be homebrewing. It's a lot of guys. It's just like try doing this next time. Like to
it's constructive, right? It's
exactly,
not people.
Totally.
People are just looking to really help each other out, right?
Yeah, totally. It's you don't want to polarize anybody. And if someone new comes down to a meeting, I always make a point to introduce myself, say hello, all that, and thank them for coming down. Because like I was saying before, I think the best thing that happened out of the shop was the community and that club. I think they're a big part of the shop. So,
and you guys, and representatives from the club, you guys go and you guys do beer events, you do like craft beer festivals. I mean, we saw you guys at a couple of festivals that we did shows at. That's got to be really cool, like growing the community, growing the brand, growing the name.
Yeah, it was great. I remember, when I first started, I was doing the events, and then when the club came around, we started doing events. And I remember the first one was at the Coliseum. And just the great response. The other thing that's really cool too as a home brewer is you can do like the wacky stuff, and you're only doing it 5-10 gallons at a clip. So if it's like a science experiment and it turns out successful, and then people come, it's like they're going to like the beer events. They get to try something a little different than what commercial breweries can do because it's more of a risk involved to doing like the wacky stuff that home brewers can do. So
right. And so, do you have any particular styles that you're fond of, that you like to brew over others, or is it just kind of is what it is?
Okay. I used to. I mean, I used to do like more English forward beers, but now I just kind of like check my inventory as to what I got. You know, it's like what haven't I brewed lately. So I don't really have like favorite styles. I just like to brew. I just like the you know, the active brewing, I guess, so to speak, because to me it's relaxing. It's almost cathartic, you know. So.
Sure. So
Yeah.
you homebrew fairly often, I would assume.
Yeah, I'd say my average is once a week. So, and that's why I like doing the festivals too, so I can like unload beer.
And then so when you're brewing at home, roughly how much are you brewing?
I mean, I don't really brew at home anymore. I brought
Well, you brew here, right?
I brew here now. My wife pretty much forbade me from doing anything homebrew at home, which makes perfect sense. So, you know, just like do 5 gallons. I used to do bigger batches, but you know, you get kind of tired of stuff. You know, it's like you kind of want to move on to the next thing. You don't want to commit to too much. You know, it's like you don't have like this thought rattling in my head, and I want to brew that. So
That's cool.
yeah.
No, that's pretty cool. So, and I understand that you guys also, you know, people can come down here and they can brew. You have a half barrel system here, right? Which
I have,
which is about what, like 6 cases of beer, roughly.
Roughly about that. Yeah. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit more about that? So what's that process like? How can someone come down and do that?
I mean, it's you know, it's pretty open. People call up, they schedule a time, and they come down and they brew. It's you know, for all grain brewing. So, and then I have, you know, where someone could do an extract brew also, but. You know, you get to make 10 to 15 gallons of beer. You get a brew assistant, which is me. I do a lot of the cleaning.
Nice.
So, you know, just get to hang out and make beer. So
That's cool. So for our audience who may not completely understand the difference, can you, at a high level, the difference between all grain and extract brewing?
So with extract brewing, it's you know, it's kind of like where you get started. Most like I'd say 95% all home brewers start with extract, and what it is they'll take the 2-row, which is where you're going to get your fermentable sugars, and they do the mashing process and they reduce it, and that's one less thing you have to do when you go jump to all grain brewing. So it just simplifies the process, but that's where you cut your teeth. That's where you learn. You know, most of the process, and then, you know, like the step up would be all grain, which is where you actually do the conversion from the malt to get your fermentable sugars, whereas with the extract, it's already like prepackaged in either like syrup or dried malt extract. So.
Cool. So I understand that you're a certified beer judge. Is that correct?
Yeah, I became a certified beer judge in 2015. You know, it's just like little things to just, I guess, legitimize the store type of thing. But, you know, I figure it was just the next natural progression, because it's, I can discern different things in beers, but that just kind of like put a title to it. So, you know, I did the online test, passed the online test. I took classes that was actually done through the other homebrew club that I'm affiliated with, LIBME, with Andrew Liberto. He did a great job with the classes. So, and then you have to take an actual tasting test, and, you know, you're scored on everything. So it's not like, you know, it's not really as easy as just drinking beer.
Right.
You need to know what's going on in the glass, and is it to style? What's flawed, and how to fix it, and all that other stuff. And I think also by doing that, it made me a way better brewer also, just to be able to like discern all that stuff. So
yeah, how long were you kind of preparing for that?
You know, that's a good. I'd say all my life.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I mean,
or my whole drinking life, but it was a couple of months. It was like 3 or 4 months of like really getting into the nitty gritty of things with the beer. So
was there anything? So when you finally got in there, obviously the written test is one part of it, and then the taste test. Was there anything that you know, stood out to you that wow, like this is a little bit more difficult than you had imagined, or was it kind of like you prepped, you were good, you went in there, you did what you had to do?
Honestly, the online portion that, you know, like the test you have to take before you can take the tasting test, it's like, I think it's like 180 or 200 questions you have to answer.
It's a big test.
Big test. And, you know, you have to be able to discern different beer styles, you know, like protocol for, you know, homebrew competitions and all that other stuff. And you gotta pass that test. If you don't get to take that tasting test. So.
Right. And so is this something you'd recommend to other craft beer enthusiasts who are looking to kind of, you know, expand their beer knowledge, maybe even move on to the next level?
Is in regards to becoming a certified beer judge, you mean?
Yeah.
It definitely helps you with your process. It also, is in regards to like, why am I getting this off flavor in my beer type of thing. So like that stuff that's covered in there, like stuff you learn. There's a lot of info out there too. I think it's a great idea to do it if you really like, neck deep in it. So
Right. Yeah. If you really like live and breathe in it.
yeah, for sure.
Hey again, this is Rachel. Don't forget to visit beertodaybeertomorrow.com to check out our weekly blog to stay up to date on all of our upcoming news, events, and episodes. When we rejoin the show, AJ from the Hand Grenades Homebrew Craft Beer Club, a group registered with the American Homebrew Association, joins the show. Now, AJ's mic is a little wonky when he first hops on, but we smooth it out pretty quickly. So grab another brew and enjoy the rest of the show.
This is Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow. We are back after a little bit of a break, hopping right back into the conversation. So do you currently have any special brews in the works? Anything you're really excited about? You got anything going on at the moment?
So actually, we got just kegged it 2 weeks ago. We have me and this other guy, John, who's pretty much John Danny, who's pretty much like a staple at the shop. We did smoked squash porter.
Wow.
So he had smoked the squash with mesquite, and I just brewed the beer. We're trying to try to capture lightning in a bottle type of thing. Last year we did it with pumpkin, and we actually got first place with the beer in the smoked category. So
In which competition?
it was the New York City Homebrewers Guild competition,
Nice.
Homebrew Alley. Yeah, I was pretty stoked. I was actually, when we had won, I was driving in, and someone had texted me. He's like, "Oh, you got first place for your beer." I was like, "Ha ha, very funny,"
Wow,
So it was
that's
pretty
awesome.
cool. Yeah,
Congrats,
it was
man.
exciting.
How did you find this time around brewing with squash?
Same as pumpkin. Believe it or not, a lot of pumpkin beers that are out there, they use squash. I mean, it's a pretty similar texture and flavor as pumpkin, so it's more accessible too. You're not tied down to like when fall when pumpkins are made. I mean, there's also like pumpkin puree, but there's people that get hung up on that's puree, but it's still pumpkin. So
Right.
But it wasn't too bad. We did the same process. I like to put the pumpkin in the mash inside of a bag, and then I'll take that pumpkin, or in this case squash, and I'll throw it in the last 20 minutes of the boil. It gives it a really nice mouthfeel, nice smooth kind of texture, and the flavor's soft, but you definitely get a lot of smokiness out of it. So we did play with the recipe for a little bit. So we're gonna see what happens this year. We're gonna put it in. We tweaked it a little bit, but I was pretty happy with how that came out. So
Is that ready to go now?
it's ready to go now. Yeah. So we can
Nice.
take a pull if you want.
I'm not going to say no to beer.
All right. All right. AJ, you want some smoky?
Yeah, and we're just busting out some beers here, doing a little sampling. We're about to try a exclusive, some smoky squash porter. Excited about that for sure. And again, we're just really pleased to be here today, early in the morning here in Nassau, having a few beers. Beer today, beer tomorrow. It's what we do. Again, check us out, www.beertodaybeertomorrow.com. You can also find us. You can find our podcast on iTunes and Podbean. We'll be coming to Stitcher and Google Play very soon, so we'll let you know when that drops. And of course, follow us on our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You know where we are. Come follow us. Come find us. Follow the Craft Beer Odyssey. And so now, Pete, so what's this? You guys have a name for this one?
Actually, we don't. Usually that's part of the charm of making beer is coming up with goofy names, but yeah, we didn't actually come up with one. We just kind of call it smoky pumpkin porter or smoky squash porter,
Okay.
So
Excited. Thank you.
got it. See if this thing held up.
So how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Good. Pete.
AJ.
Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, AJ,
AJ's
we're gonna.
actually part of the homebrew club also.
Nice. AJ, why don't you kind of introduce yourself to the to our audience?
My name's AJ D'Amico. I've been homebrewing for about 10 years now.
And might I mention that AJ and a couple other people
You're good,
here.
you're good.
One at GSB for the Great South Bay for the Pro-Am.
Yes. Yes, we brewed a Saison
Nice.
with Great South Bay.
Oh,
That's
nice.
going to be at the Pro-Am this year as well.
Oh, very nice. So
Yeah.
tell us a little about the Saison. What went into that?
I actually have the recipe with me right here. We used some
How's that?
two-row.
Timing, right?
Right?
That's
Go
perfect.
figure. We used some Vienna malt, some Pilsner, and some pale two-row malt.
Nice.
Yeah. And then we used Great South Bay's house yeast, some Northern Brewer hops, and some Citra hops in it.
Excellent. And is that currently is that available, ready to go now?
Not yet. It is still in the tanks fermenting.
Mhm.
Last time I checked with them, so it should be ready in a couple of weeks, I believe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And were you involved in brewing what we're drinking right now?
No, I'm not even sure what we're drinking right now.
This is, I believe he said, this is the smoky squash porter.
Ooh,
So about to try this now. Cheers.
cheers.
Wow. That's not. It's got an it's got a little bit of a meatiness almost, I guess, from the squash.
Yeah, definitely pick up on the smokiness.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. I like this. This is interesting. I haven't had, to be honest, I haven't had many porters with squash.
Me neither.
So this is one of the very few. But I like this. This is nice. This
Yeah.
is nice. When Pete gets back on, we'll have him kind of maybe go a little bit deeper into this. But I do enjoy this. So now you're a member of the homebrew club, right?
Yes.
So how long have you been part of the group?
I've been part of the group since they first organized in 2014.
Okay.
So I've been there since the first meeting.
It's one of the original guys, huh?
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
definitely. One of the OGs.
One of the OGs. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, we're just trying this. This is nice. Can you tell us a little bit more about this one?
I mean, I don't know. It was just like, it was actually, it was John's idea. John Danier was his idea. Comes up with these wacky ideas and just kind of like calculate in my head. We kind of smash things together and that's how it came out. But it's, the malt is Maris Otter, which has like a little bit more complexity. It's a base malt. You get more like bready notes out of it. What do we do? I used actual mesquite malt, which is, smoked with mesquite to, kind of like push up the smoked flavor from the squash. The squash, helps also with the mouthfeel, so you get like slight velvetyness, creaminess also. The flavor's pretty soft with the squash, but I think the mesquite just like overpowers it also, which is kind of what we were going for. And then we did some black patent. Was it black? No, it wasn't black patent. I'm sorry. It was midnight wheat, which kind of reduces like astringency. Because last time when we did, I thought it was a little bit too astringent because I think we used roasted barley. So, I just want to like cut it back a little bit. I wanted the smoke and the, in this case, the squash to pop a little bit more. So, it's a softer roasty flavor. So,
I like this.
Yeah.
I like this.
thank you.
Yeah.
I could sit and spell this beer all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny sometimes, like when you, with the smoked malt, like I used to have it in like bigger container when I was when people would purchase it, and I just open up like the container and I would just salivate because it just reminds me of bacon. So.
Very nice. Very nice. So, is the squash was that did you get that locally or?
Yeah, we got it at the local supermarkets right down the block, so it was pretty local, right? Supporting the local business.
Local business, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there's too many squash farms in Long Island. I don't know if there ever really was. I don't know. Is like squash conducive to be growing? I have no idea.
I actually don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know much about squash. I will be
Yeah,
honest.
me neither. Yeah.
How much squash did you use?
I think it was 2 or 3 squash, I believe. The bag was pretty heavy, so it was a lot of squash. And I think he smoked for like an hour or so or something like that. So
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Hope he doesn't get mad. I'm giving out all the secrets on the beer. So
What would you say, the philosophy here is at Home Brew and Hand Grenades?
So the philosophy, pinkies down. Pinkies down. It's just beer. Like that's just my approach to it. I'm not a fan of like when I was younger, I used to listen to certain bands and they were like scene stirs, for like the scenes for bands, and they're like, oh, they're a poser or this and that. I hated that stuff. So I just kind of always kept that approach. It's like, it's pinkies down, man. It's just beer. It's just beer. So,
couldn't agree more.
Everyone starts at the beginning. Just their beginnings at a different time than you. You don't want to like polarize anyone. Just that aspect of like the whole snobbery thing just kills me, and I think that's bad for craft in general, or just beer in general. I think that's just not a good thing. So I just keep it pinkies down. No stupid questions. Less is more. Stuff like that. So.
Sure. And on this show, we're definitely, obviously, we're very pro craft beer, but you have to kind of also like so for example, we were drinking the Blue Point, the Stash It, which was a really it's a really nice beer. It's a pre-prohibition lager with peppers and ginger. It's done really well. You mentioned it was going to be at the Great American Beer Festival.
Yep, that's the competition.
Yep.
You're drinking it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because some people might say, well, oh, those guys, they're owned by InBev. They're not really craft. And I feel my personal standpoint is this: we're pro craft, and we'll almost always rather go to a local brewery, than grab something, let's say, at the supermarket off the shelf. But at the end of the day, I mean, good beer is good beer.
Yes.
And it doesn't really matter who's, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter who's making it, so long as it's good. I mean, obviously, you want to support the local guy. Obviously, you want to build that local community. But, like you said, it's pinkies down. It's just beer.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, everyone will, you'd be like, oh, you drink Bud. But you know what? No matter where you drink a Budweiser, it tastes the same. So there's something to be said about that, like they have it down. And in regards to like, if someone gets acquired by InBev or whatever, I mean, is it a bad thing? Well, not for the people that got acquired, as long as things don't change, I'm not adverse to it. It's going to be business as usual, hopefully. I just hope it doesn't impact, like the smaller guys, but just drink what you like. Like I was telling you earlier, I'm Miller High Life in the bottle any day of the week, man. That's one of my top fives.
There you go. And you're not the first person that's involved in the craft beer scene that we've had on the show that said something similar along those lines. And my whole thing is, I feel about it two ways, right? So first and foremost, if you make good beer, I'll drink it. You make good beer, you make good beer. I only have an issue when they're a location used to be craft and maybe they were acquired and then they're still trying to operate under the guise of being craft beer. There's a lot of truly craft beer businesses that are some of these guys are kind of hustling and struggling and
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, at this point with the internet and everything, it's transparent who's craft or
Absolutely.
Like the air quotes craft and who's not kind of thing. But let's just say, like, just a thought, and this just kind of popped in my head. So let's say someone goes to, something that was, because then they have people, these places that were acquired by AB InBev or whatever, and then they're being put on more taps, and someone drinks a beer. It's like, well, it was air quotes craft. It might open them up to going, to explore more craft, to go checking out like the more local places. It could be like. The places that were acquired could be their gateway beer into craft. So maybe, it's not horrible. I don't think it's a bad thing,
I don't think it's, and I think, I don't think it's a bad thing provided that if they acquire the brewery or the business, whatever it is, they don't really change much. Maybe they give them more resources. Maybe they give them more exposure, but they leave, what made that place successful intact.
I agree with that 1,000%. I mean, you see what like, because Blue Point's, I guess, the elephant in the room kind of thing. But, you go down there and they're still doing like their barrel projects. They're still they're still involved in the homebrew scene. They just brewed beer with homebrewers,
And by all accounts, it's a really good group of dudes down there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing too is like they're hiring more people, which is supporting the local economy. They're able to pay people better. I mean, look, you're not if you're a head brewer someplace, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be like rolling in the dough. You do it for a passion. But now they have, these people that are working there, they're probably getting paid better, benefits, 401k, who knows? I mean, I don't know, but just food for thought, And these guys are still, again, they're involved like with the home brewers, they're still at all the local events. So
Yeah, we've seen them a bunch. I mean, even we were talking earlier that we saw you guys at festivals that we were at doing shows, Blue Point, and other similar vein. That those guys were there too. And I think it's interesting because it has become kind of a topic of conversation in the craft beer scene amongst craft beer people. You get the and I think it's you get the people that say, okay, it's craft, it's got to be craft, but I think it's an interesting divide because there's and again, I'll preface all this by saying that Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow, we are certainly pro craft beer, but any way you slice it, we are. But I think it's an interesting conversation. I think it's kind of like, well, is there a benefit, like you're saying? Now you guys, these guys obviously maybe they get better salaries, better benefits, but also now better exposure. And then maybe someone comes in and says, I like this. Maybe they think that, that it's a craft beer, and maybe that opens their exposure to something else. I mean, who knows?
Well, I guess that was my point that I didn't make clear before. But that's what I'm thinking. Like that could be like they're popping their craft cherry on like a Blue Point beer. Because now they have that distribution,
right.
And could open up their world to like all the guys that are here out in the island, just to get them going. It's like, okay, my gateway beer was Blue Point, whatever. Let's say Stash It. So
right. Which, by the way, I'm not afraid to say this is a really well done beer. It's a nice beer.
I'm not surprised. The guy, I know the guys that collaborated on this brew, and they're solid brewers. Ken Heiss, Greg Kelly, they're crushing it. They always bring in solid beers. So I was excited to hear that they were making their beer, and I've actually had this beer before because the guy Ken had brought in a bottle of it before. And it was awesome. I was like, well, if you got any more, bring it in,
Yeah.
Now here we are drinking it.
Yeah. And here we are drinking it.
Greg popped in yesterday, and he dropped off the 4-pack. So thanks, Greg. You rule.
Awesome. Yeah. Shout out to Greg. So do you guys, getting back to you guys, do you guys have any upcoming events that you guys can talk about? Anything you want to mention?
There's we got a few things going on. Yeah. We got Pour the Core, which is a cider festival.
Right.
Which is I think Starfish does that event.
Yep.
Punktoberfest at Great South Bay.
Right.
We got Brew for a Cure.
Yeah.
Fundraiser for St. Jude's Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
Right.
Very great cause.
Taps and Talons.
Taps and Talons
in Smithtown, which helps like an animal sanctuary. So I'm a big advocate for doing like the charity events.
That's great.
We did like Brew for Autism.
Absolutely. That's the shirt you're wearing right now.
That's what I'm wearing right now. Like that. When I heard about that event, to me that was a really important event because actually my son is nonverbal autistic. So, as soon as I heard about that, I was like, I need to be involved with that, and the club stepped up, and I love them greatly for that. It was a really awesome event. So I'll be doing that every year.
That's awesome. And it's almost kind of beating my audience over the head because we talk about this all the time. But it's so true. Craft beer is community. I mean, it brings people together.
Sure.
You have people working together for causes. You have people just working together, just having a good time. And at the end of the day, I think what it all boils down to again, it's it's beer. So it should be something that should be fun.
Sure.
It should be delicious.
Yeah.
It should be done well. But it should be something that's kind of like part of your experience.
Yes. Yeah. And I think also too, like getting back to that whole supporting local and craft. That going to like local brewery is like an experience too. So.
Oh, absolutely! It's a great experience. I mean, we always say go down to your local brewery, show those guys, or those girls, whoever's down there, whoever's running your local brewery, show them some love. I mean, it's a great time. You get exposed to all kinds of different styles, different beers, and it's a great time. It's a great time. Now, you mentioned that you guys doing a cider festival, and we were talking about this before you got on the air. That the market's becoming very saturated with IPAs. So, are there any other like ciders or maybe other type of brews that you guys like to do that kind of is polar opposite of this IPA fad?
For me, I'm not. That's a tough question. When I brew, I just kind of brew on a whim, kind of thing. What I'm gonna do. I try not to focus on style. I just kind of like just inventory what I have, and that's kind of how I base how I brew.
So it's kind of like just for the love of it. You got beer here. You got ingredients.
Yeah.
You want to start brewing it.
Exactly.
Just getting it out.
Yeah. I don't know what the next, and maybe people are gonna come at the door with pitchforks and stuff. But I don't know what like the next trend is. I think like we were talking before. Like that whole New England dirty IPA thing. I think it's kind of like it's trending.
It's the big trend right now.
It's the big trend. And
It is.
we'll see where it goes. So
Yeah, and we were actually talking. We were at Transmitter at our last show, but and they're the only brewery in Queens, and we were talking about this before we got on the air. They're the only brewery in Queens that actually doesn't have an IPA on
no,
the.
and I love it.
Yeah, and in a way, it's refreshing because we're all, a lot of us, on the BTBT, call ourselves the BTBT goons. We're most of us are pretty big hopheads, but there is that kind of
It's
there's a little
refreshing to
bit of
have
the
something.
Yeah, you gotta break it up.
You got to break it. There's a
Yeah.
little bit of fatigue when you keep having that, that heavy dank IPA, and not only that, it's when you're out in a group, like you really can't throw back that many IPAs or even forbid double IPAs and
Yeah.
still kind of be
Gotta be a little
functional.
responsible.
You got to be a little responsible, and beer's not just about one style. That's what's so amazing about beer, and I think that's why craft beer is exploding, and I think that's why it still has more of a way to go, because I think the average person, the average beer drinker, just doesn't know what all these different flavor complexities.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, with the BJCP beer judge certification program, I mean, I think it was like 80 beer styles. I think they're up to like almost like 140 or something like that. So, I mean, there's just so many different types of beers out there. It's go out and explore. Don't get hung up on a particular style, Even like the old school, like German stuff, like I've just been like, I want a nice clean Kolsch. I want a nice clean like Pilsner.
Oh.
It's like
Now's the time, Oktoberfest.
nice
gearing up.
Oktoberfest. Like if you really want to impress me, make a good one of those. That's when someone's doing something right, because you can't hide anything in those beers. Those beers are clean and crisp. So I'm a big fan of those beers. I mean, I'm a fan of a lot of like almost every beer.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
good.
Same here, but those old school German styles. I mean, those those are great beers. I mean,
Sure.
and like you said, I mean, it's when you get a nice like light beer, it's very hard to hide imperfections. So you really need to nail it.
Sure.
And now it's perfect time. Oktoberfest. Do you guys have any? So you're doing the Punktoberfest, right? And that's
Yes,
kind of
yeah.
like Great South Bay's kind of
that's
take
one
on Oktoberfest, right? It's
Sure.
gonna be music and beers and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's they always throw good events. They always a lot of fun. We get, especially the club, they get great feedback. I noticed that every event that the club does, just get more and more people responding to the club, which is awesome because, like I was saying earlier, the club gets to do a lot more fun stuff with their beer versus like commercial breweries that, it's like, they have a market that they have to, I guess all intents and purposes, answer to. Whereas with home brewers, we can do like the crazy fun stuff that, people might be like, oh, that's different. Like I do like a Swedish fish beer, and I always kick that keg, and it was just like a goof kind of thing.
Tell us about that. I'm curious. Swedish fish beer. I used to love Swedish fish.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how it stemmed. I love Swedish fish too. It's just the base is just like a honey wheat kind of thing, and just get some Swedish fish in there, and it just pops. I thought it was like an accident that it came out tasting like Swedish fish. It did. It was, got a good response, and I tried doing it again, thinking like that was like a one-off thing, like this is not gonna come out again like that, and I got it down. So people seem to dig it, But it's like one of those like it's all marketing sometimes too. It's like
Sure.
It's like I really need to kick this keg. I have like 3 beers I need to keg, so this will go, so I can clean it out and put the next one in for a festival type of thing.
An alcoholic Swedish fish. You sold me on that.
Yeah.
Definitely got to try that.
Unfortunately, I don't have any on hand right now. But,
man, but that's actually and that's the great thing about kind of like homebrewing. You don't really have these restrictions. You can kind of brew much smaller batches.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can just kind of it's kind of like it's like equal parts science and passion. And
definitely.
and you combine that. I mean, you can come up with some pretty unique and interesting flavors.
Yeah. And the other thing too, like with the club a while ago, we did Girl Scout cookie beers.
Yeah.
You know, we do like chop challenges and stuff like that where, it was Girl Scout season. My thought was to support the guys in the club that have daughters that are in Girl Scouts to buy the cookies and, make a beer that's supposed to taste like whatever Girl Scout cookie that you were assigned, like your team was assigned to.
We had 9 beers for that
Something like that, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Each team was assigned a different cookie.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and the goal was for the beer to taste like, the cookie that was assigned to them. So, but it's fun, It's like the other thing too. It's like it's the challenge. It's like
how do you make that happen? How do you make that cookie translate well into that beer?
Sure, and it's not even just like you don't dump the cookies into the beer. Like like this, all these different ingredients that you can use to make whatever nuance of the cookie pop. It's like if I'm doing like I was given the peanut butter ones. I forgot what they're called.
Reese's?
No, it's
Do-si-dos?
Maybe. Let's say it's do-si-dos.
I think
So
had
we can move on
Do-si-dos.
with the story, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we got the group together. We got a box of the cookies. We're eating. It's like, all right, what am I getting out of this cookie that I can pull out from like a certain type of malt? So it just gets the gears going. How are we gonna pull out the peanut butter flavor? And then just because we felt we had to, we threw the cookies in the beer for a little bit too. So, and then when we pulled it out, it was like a giant pile of mush. So, but it tasted like the cookie, which was really cool. So,
Wow. It just sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, it just sounds like a lot of fun to do
Yeah.
it.
Well, the other thing too that's nice when you do stuff like that is you're working in teams. So you're learning from different people. Like, it's like, well, usually at home I'll do this. And it's just like, I would have never thought of that. Like that's a great idea. So again, it comes back to that whole like communal thing, which is nice. So just like everyone's learning off each other. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
and feeding off each other. So
Absolutely. What are the hours of operation here at the shop?
I'm open like Tuesday through Friday, 12 to 7. Saturdays 11 to 6, and Sundays 12 to 4. So Sunday's like my Friday, I guess, so to speak. So
And you guys have a obviously you guys have a website. What's the URL on that?
it's brewgrenades.com.
And
So,
you guys are on all the social channels, Instagram,
yeah,
Twitter, Facebook,
and
all that stuff.
All that stuff. Yeah, Facebook. All that stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So what was what's the foot traffic like? I mean, I'm curious. Like, is it mostly people who kind of like they already know who you guys are and they come in like, okay, I need X, Y, and Z. But do you also get kind of just people curious, just foot traffic off the street?
The foot traffic is for not really so much foot traffic.
That's where people know who you guys are.
Yeah, it's kind of like a destination kind of thing. I mean, people come in, they're like, oh, can I make a Heineken kind of thing? I'm like, and you try to say it in the nicest way possible. It's like, you've never brewed before. Honestly, it would be better if you just bought Heineken because it's a little bit more involved than your first one-off to be a Heineken. Like
Right.
it's lagering. It's more,
process.
it's more minutia than standard home brewing. Like brewing ales and stuff like that. So, but you try to give them like the gist of what it is, and if they take to it, awesome. And I always tell them, we do classes here, we do one-on-one type of thing. So,
And the classes are held here on site.
yep, held here on site. Yeah. So
Is there a set schedule for that, or is kind of like it depends? Or?
it just depends on, because it's kind of seasonal. Those
Right.
things, they're floating around on Groupon, and usually around like 6 months after Christmas or 6 months after Father's Day. That's when everyone starts calling in because they're gonna expire. So, usually around that point is when I'll start. But usually like twice a month I'll have the class here. And then, I'll do like one-on-one all-grain sessions, which is more advanced brewing. And that's I prefer doing that one-on-one because all-grain brewing is a longer process, and extract brewing is about, you can get it done in like a little over, 2 hours. But all-grain brewing is a longer process, so, and then they're walking out with the beer also, and knowledge, hopefully. So
Sure.
After a couple beers, we'll see. So.
After a couple of we'll see. So have you ever thought about opening a brewery?
I mean, you think about it, and then you think of all the logistical nightmares that you hear about, you know.
Sure. It's hard.
The cool thing with the shop is I've met a lot of people that do own breweries or have, you know, or in the process of opening breweries, and, you know, they vent, and it's tough, and especially in Nassau County. Like, if I was thinking about opening a brewery, I would want to do it around here, just because it's not a lot going on over here, and it seems like Nassau is like this weird void of craft, you know, and trying to change it, but there's also, you know, there's zoning issues, there's like, you know, sewage issues, there's like neighborhood issues. It's like, I don't want a brewery, it's going to bring out all the riffraff, which is like hardly what happens.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, it's just bringing a bunch of nerds together for the most part.
Pretty
You know,
much,
craft beer
yeah.
nerds, you know.
Yeah, a
and,
bunch of beer nerds, yeah.
and
The
it's
coolest beer nerds ever.
the coolest beer nerds are absolutely. And it's interesting because I noticed that because Long Island is so widespread, where it's like when you get to the boroughs, it's a little bit easier to build that community because everything's so close.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, everyone's on top of each other.
Yeah.
You know, which
literally,
is, yeah,
literally on
with,
top
with
of each other.
You know, when you come out to the burbs, there's a little bit more space. It's kind of like, you know, everyone's got their fence up, type of thing. But you know, like I said, you know, when it comes to beer, there's like no fences, I guess.
True.
But I think a part of it just has to do with like, and it's a theory, but I just think it has to do with like local government and stuff like that. You know, it's like I don't know if they want to put forth the effort to make the craft beer thing grow. I don't know, like, because you just hear horror stories where it's just like, nope, not interested. Or it's like, yeah, I guess we could, but, you know, I need a lettuce sandwich type of thing, you know? It's tough, you know, and
It
it's
is.
like if you're trying to open up a brewery, you're trying
It's
to
expensive.
yeah, it's expensive. Yeah, because it's like one of the hardest businesses to open. You have pretty much you have to pay rent on a building for a year, and you got to wait for your licensing to come through. You know, and then they can be like, nope, you're good. It's not happening, and you spent all this money. You have to have the equipment set up. You know, you have to have an architect submit designs. And then they can just pull the rug from under you, and you're like, $120,000 in the hole.
Yeah,
It's scary.
it is. It's
a scary venture. So, I guess getting back to, have I thought about it? Sure. But when I hear that stuff, I don't know about that. It'd be fun, but if I had won that the lottery last week like that woman did, yeah,
Oh,
sure,
wow.
that'd be
Yeah.
like a passion project, right?
Sure, sure.
Be baking ground today.
Yeah, I'll give lots of lettuce sandwiches then.
There you go. What's been the most rewarding part of this journey so far?
Honestly, the club, like just the people I've met. When I first opened, when I was 35, I thought I was like, I got my friends and I'm good. You got your friends for life. And I made a lot of new friends, which is awesome. And people that, I don't want to sound like I'm patting myself on the back, but a lot of people that would have never met and are hanging out, which is really like, that's my favorite part of it. Also, the commute too is pretty awesome. So I used to have to schlep into Brooklyn, so I don't miss doing that. I don't miss that Bell Parkway.
No,
Yeah.
the Belt's a mess.
Yeah, always. Perpetually.
Always.
Should be called the Mess Parkway.
Yeah. So, what's next for Home Brew and Hand Grenades?
The $1 million question, right? What's
Yeah.
next? I don't, just looking to expand a little bit. Looking to grow the whole brew on premise thing. I am looking at like another location that's still close to the area, a little bit bigger, try to expand things. I guess maybe that's like the next thing. So.
Cool. Anything else you'd like to leave the audience with? Anything the audience should know? Anything you guys wanna leave us with?
I say check out the club meetings. If you're a home brewer, check out the club. I think the communal aspect of it is really awesome, and I think it helps. I think it's helped a lot of the people in the club grow as brewers. There's the link for the club through the website, but I think it's hhcbc.org.
Yes.
And that's where we have we'll put up when we have meetings coming up. The next one's actually going to be September 19th, I believe. It's at Brew SA, which is a brewery in Freeport.
Yeah, Local.
Local, yeah. And
Local brewery.
It's,
Local brewery again.
it's an open club, you know. It's just come on down and hang out.
Right.
You know, there's like we've been at places where, and people that weren't there to attend the meeting just came and hang out, and some of them actually stuck around, which is really cool. So
Very cool. Awesome. AJ, any parting words?
No.
Pinkies down?
Pinkies down.
Pinkies down.
it's just
Pinkies
beer,
down.
right?
Just
It's
beer.
just beer. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for letting us do the show here today. We really appreciate it. Beer today, beer tomorrow, here at Brew and Hand Grenades in Baldwin in Nassau County in Long Island. Check these guys out and keep listening to the show. Guys, what else can I say? But cheers. Take it easy.
Cheers.
Cheers to beers.
Cheers and beers.
Thanks for listening to this week's show. We really appreciate your support. We are back next week with episode 30 featuring Coney Island of Brooklyn, New York. Now, remember to follow the Craft Beer Odyssey. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Until next time, no matter where in the world you are, drink local, drink fresh, repeat. Cheers.